We then were starting working with them was trying to do a chlorine residual check. We normally check about 30 sites throughout the year, every on a month. We've always been very good and have always passed those, and so thus we've never had a boil water notice usage. However, on Saturday, the sampling sites increased. We went to 54. Some of our normal sampling sites, and then others where we were looking for dead ends and fire hydrants. Out of the, I believe, 54 or 56 sites tested, 14 failed. We had a limit that we could go to 6, but 14 failed. That triggered the boil water notice. The test for the amoeba did not require a boil water notice. It was the failure of the chlorine residual at 14 sites that triggered that. The boil water notice. So we're now in a chlorine conversion process and a boil water notice on top of that. Uh, so I'm going to try to simply explain this. I'm not a chemist, so if there are any chemists out there, you can scrutinize me all day long, and you will be correct that sometimes I don't get the nomenclature right. But in the big picture, here's really what we're trying to accomplish. We're trying to get our free chlorine residual now to a certain benchmark that TCU is requiring for us to get out of the boil water notice. That is much lower than the benchmark that we are trying to get to a level of a 1.0. The lower benchmark may take us several days. It could take us 7 days. It could take us 14 days. Right now, I'm hearing from the engineers that are looking at the site at our point distributions, the chlorine residual is very high. But just imagine we're an even plane, and we've got to get out to that and hit that benchmark all over the city throughout our distribution system, even to the first further reaches of the city limits. That's the time that it takes to get this out. So as we're moving through the neighborhoods, but we're getting it out through the system. That's what takes time. And that's where the engineers are trying to measure it and trying to give us a feel for where are we in the process. And that we still don't have a handle on. We are right now at the points we're looking good, but I couldn't tell anybody, are we 50%, 75%? That we don't know yet. And that's what we were trying to get at. But the system is, it's a very mechanical system of moving water throughout, just like in your home. Now, just imagine we're moving that throughout the whole system to hit a benchmark. Once we hit that threshold, then we can come off the boil water notice. Again, could it take 7 days? Could it take 14? Could it be sooner? Our rush is to try to get that sooner. That's our hope. That's TCEQ's hope. And I know it's every citizen's and business hope as well to get that as soon as possible. And so getting to that also requires us to flush the old water out and use this free chlorine water through the system. The best way that it's been explained, to me is, we have light chlorine and we have regular chlorine. We normally chlorinate the water with ammonia that creates a chlorine process. That's usually throughout the year. That's what you have. This time we're using a little more heavy chlorinated water. That's not to alarm anyone. We do this twice a year already, just like many other municipalities. Most cities do throughout the year, but we do it twice a year. We had done this process in June and we're scheduled in November. The difference here is we usually hold it for 2 weeks. The challenge is now that we have to hold it for 60 days. So again, once we hit a benchmark, it's lower than our 60-day mark. It's the boil water notice will come off. Then we have to hit a level of 1.0. Once we hit that level of 1.0, we have to hold and maintain that for 60 days. That's probably where I and the rest of us have caused a little bit of confusion. The 60-day calendar has not started at all yet. That'll start when we hit a 1. The boil water notice is not tied to 60 days. We do not think anywhere that we will have to boil water for 60 days. It's hitting a lower threshold. Once we hit that comes off. Then we hit a higher threshold, and then we have to hold it for 60 days. So they are separate. The 60-day requirement is going to be because we're trying to make sure that we've killed any bacteria that could have possibly been if there was an amoeba there. That's the purpose of that. So again, I just want to make sure that they're separate. The 60-day time clock has not started as yet. On top of that, because this is such a humongous task for the utility system and the crews working on it, especially for the 60-day period, we really have to lower our water usage. That's where the drought contingency requirements have come into place. We've issued a stage 4 drought contingency. That's our highest level that we have. And we have that as an ordinance and part of our plan. Most of the time it's tied to, I would say, droughts during the summer. This time it's tied to that we need all of our water capacity to be used for flushing. And we also need all of our water capacity to be used for moving this through the system. And then we've practically have cut ourselves off from BWA water and using 100% well water. We have 11 wells, and so we're using those all the time. We have not we usually do a 50-50 blend. So now we're completely on our well water. That will put a strain on the system, on all the wells. And we want to make sure we can maintain that well capacity. And that's why we want to lower the usage. So it's been holding on all of us to really use our water conservatively. So no water, it's really outdoor use. No water in the yard, limiting car washes, especially commercial washes. We're working with the car washes to limit them to 4 hours a day, but even washing your car at home. Pools, there's been a lot of questions about filling the pools and stuff. We really don't want filling the pool or draining the pool. You can still maintain your pool, but the filling and stuff, again, the whole purpose is to lower that water usage because we're taxing the wells where you're using them at their full capacity 22 hours a day. And we want to make sure that they are kept up to speed and where they are functioning properly. So it's important for all of us to take that into consideration. That's the process we're going through now. The second component that we're now beginning to implement is what we call our home customer service inspection, and even in businesses. And really what we're looking for, are there possible breaches in the system that we have not picked up? And it could be as simple as there wasn't a backflow device on an irrigation system. Did someone have an irrigation system tied to the creek and it didn't have a backflow device? So if it picked up any stagnant water, could it gotten back into the system? It can be as simple as a hose laying down on the ground for a period of time, and there's a puddle, and it could pick up any stagnant water. A lot of times that can happen when you have a broken line, and also we lose pressure, and it can pick up any water back into the system. That's the purpose of a backflow prevention device. These individuals are helping us. Customer service inspectors are looking for such of those things. They won't correct them. They're only trying to identify them homes. It's all looking outside of the home, looking at our meter, if it's correct, if there's any cross connections at the meter, but it also may be looking at water hoses sitting in there, or if there's backflow devices on the house. Most of the time, everybody will be in compliance, but on occasion there could be. But that's what we're trying to research anywhere, system-wide. Do we have any potential backflow problems or breaches into the system? We are working with the state. The city of Houston has helped us in this venture, and a private contractor are working with us and sending us consumer service inspectors for the next several days. But this will probably be a long-term project, or even folded into our system on a daily basis for the now and foreseeable future, before we get through a whole survey of the city. So it won't be something that we could be able to complete in 1 or 2 weeks. That doesn't mean that will prevent us from going forward out of the 60 days. It's just that this is probably a long-term project of us seeing what we have, if we have any problems, trying to get those corrected and make sure that they don't happen again if we do find those. So it'll probably be something we will roll into our city standards from now on. The one thing also I want to get across from the customer service inspectors is, and we'll get to questions as well. Let me finish this point right there, and then I'll try to answer some of the questions. City staff will be wearing identification and driving city vehicles. We will be going in yards. We will knock and ask for your permission. We'll leave a note if you're not, and then you can call if you're not home. You can call, leave to call for permission. You can tell us, yes, we would like you to come back out. We can inspect that. Staff does not go into people's home, nor are our contractors, and will not ask for ID. And you can still always call and verify verification of the inspector with dispatch or city hall. There are scammers out there, and you have to be aware for that. And they may call for your information, and they may ask you for your information, or they may ask to go into your home. Absolutely do not allow that. If that's happening, please call the police department. We will not ask for any of that. All we're asking for permission is to go in your yard and look and see if there's a cross connection problem or if there's a backflow device. So I just want to make sure that clear will be clearly identified, badges, identification, and the basic information we're looking for. But you always have to be cognizant in this time of there could be scammers, and please be aware of those. And if you do come across that, report it immediately to the police department. So those are the basic things that I want to get across today. But I think there's probably a couple of questions. And
yeah, hey Modesto, this is Megan for everyone. I'm going to be your Q&A girl. We also have Deb Webb, our Assistant Public Works Director in my office, so she can answer questions if Modesto cannot.
Great. Thank you very much, Megan.
We'll start at the top. The first question is, what is the purpose of the citywide home visit by the state? What action will be taken if cross connections are found?
Good question. That again, TCEQ notified us, yesterday and several days before, and also it spoke to the governor at the governor's press conference. We're trying to see if there are breaches in the system, so where an amoeba could get in, or why we maybe even had low chlorine residuals. And so it's not uncommon for this to happen where you have breaches, but usually cities may have a more regular process on that. We do for new homes that have been constructed as part of the construction process, my understanding, but there could be breaches, after construction that happen. Again, it could be very simple as someone may have a irrigation line down to the creek, and they've tied it back with a pump and put it in the irrigation system, but the irrigation system is still tied to the water line, still to the water system, and there may not be a backflow device. And so all of a sudden there's a lower pressure and stuff. That water could then get back into our system. Those are the things we have to check for to make sure that any stagnant water or any bacteria doesn't get into our system that way. That's the purpose of the customer service inspection, to make sure anywhere are there breaches and then eliminate those. If we identify those, then we'll have to work with the citizen on what steps they would need to take to put their proper equipment in at their home to make sure it doesn't tie in back into the public utility system.
Okay, Modesto, the next one is, why is the city switching to 100% well water?
Good question. The BWA water is like our regular water. It's chlorinated with ammonia. And so again, maybe a chlorine light. And so when we are switching now to this other water, to a free chlorine, this ammoniated chlorinated water becomes a food source, and we can't mix both of them. And all of a sudden, because now we're trying to kill any bacteria in the system, if we were using the BWA regular water, since it's lower chlorinated and it has a different chlorine, it is a food source now. So we have to keep that out. We would have to heavily chlorinate that to cancel what they have done, and then make it match to the other water now that we're pulling from the wells. And so we can't mix those, because one would become a food source to the water now that we're used free chlorine in. That's the reasoning why. I'm sorry, I'm unmuted. Megan, do you have another?
Yes, sir. So I think the next question is probably best answered by Deb, but let me know if you want to answer it. It says, okay, what good is all the flushing going to do on streets with a busted water line? For instance, Pansy Path has had a leak all summer.
Deb, can you answer that?
Yeah, so I'll take that one. What we believe over there is that's not a water main. The water mains are what's being flushed. So we will flush that water main. You will get fresh water down that street, and we will be following up with a trip out there to see exactly what the leak is, but it's not the main.
Okay. Thank you, Debbie.
Okay, the next question is, are the details of where the areas of the 11 with low disinfectant levels are? I believe they're just asking about the TCEQ test results. It was from Tara Russell.
Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Tara.
Yeah, I believe it's not 11. I believe it's 14. We've got that information. We're asking TCEQ if we can release that information. We have no problem with that, but we're asking TCEQ if we can release that to the public. And as soon as we get permission, then we will put that on the website. Most likely, I think those 14 sites are usually, I think they're fire hydrants. I could be incorrect, but I think most of them were fire hydrants. So we're working on trying to get permission to post that on our website and any other way that we're posting information.
And Modesto, Tara just confirmed that. Thank you. She said that answered her question. So
okay, great.
The next question is Lowe's disinfectant levels because procedures have not been followed or the proper testing of the water requirements was not followed?
Deb, that'd probably be a good question for you to answer.
No, I can answer that. We are following all testing procedures and we are flushing in accordance with that. But fire hydrants that were open during that testing procedure are not really, the level will come up. You just have to move enough water through the fire hydrant. That's not really how we were testing.
Yeah, my understanding again, what was done on Saturday was not a normal procedure for testing water. It was just a super quick procedure to finally get a handle on what the chlorine residual was. Those are not part of our regular testing procedures. Out of this, we may add more to see if there are any problems that we weren't identifying from our normal 30 as well. But this was usually out of the scope of what's usually required on this. So again, that we may be able to answer later on that the method was used on Saturday may not be the best way to test, but that may identify us also. We'll work further to see, do we have actually some spots that now we need to look at more closely and set up testing sites. Usually, again, Deb, if you could chime in here after me, is that most of the time when we test chlorine residuals, it's usually done at a hose bib faucet at someone's house. And a lot of customers really, it's like, okay, that gets problematic. You have to ask permission. Can we set up a station, at their house, but in the right of way? And so we can check those. We don't usually check fire hydrants. We usually check water stations and try to evenly distribute them out the city. That may need to increase in the future. Deb, do you have anything to add to that?
I think you answered the question. I think that is correct. And after, we get these results back, we'll have high residuals everywhere again. At all our testing sites, they were high before. We saw no low residuals.
Yeah, it was a complete surprise for us on Saturday. The low residual question we've never had a problem. So when we were testing on Saturday for the residual, I think we were easily thinking that would be something that we would easily pass, but we did not.
Okay, everyone, I think we're going to have time for one more question. Every question that is not answered, we will try and answer and post on our social media and website pages. So feel free to leave more questions, but we're going to do one more.
Oh, Deb, there was one quick question. Can you introduce Deb? Debbie Webb is our Assistant Public Works Director. She's been a long-time employee in the utilities. She came through the utility division. She was really, I guess, our lab analyst for a number of years. So she really is on the ball on lab and testing work of water analysis. But over the years, she's been moved up to the chain, and she's now our Assistant Director of Public Works. And she's heading this project working with TCEQ of getting this system flushed. So I'm kind of thrown together, and she's teaching me water for dummies, but she's the expert.
Okay, so our last question will be, Will you later rejoin with BWA? How will their ammonia cleaner not be a food source at a later date if we do?
Good question. Yes, we will. I'll let Deb explain the technical process, but since we do this this free chlorine conversion twice a year, we always connect back to the BWA. But I'll let Debbie kind of explain this is her area of expertise and not mine. Deb?
Yes, I can answer that question for you. Twice a year, we, in conjunction with BWA, do a free chlorine conversion. This time, since we're not doing it with BWA, BWA has been isolated from our system. But as soon as we get through with our conversion, we will join back together with BWA, and we run basically the same processes together. The only reason that we're not together right now is BWA is not doing a free chlorine conversion.
Okay, thank you, Deb. And I think we're going to continue this for a while to try to get out as much information as possible. We're learning as we go on some things. So sometimes I know it can be frustrating where you'll see an answer, but it's not clear. You know, it's like, I wish I had more details. We're not ignoring those questions. Sometimes we may have to go to the source. We have to talk to TCEQ, or we have to talk directly with CDC to clarify that answer. So I don't want to misspeak. In our staff, we say something because we think it's right, but we're not for sure. So sometimes we're not trying to ignore anybody. We're trying to find out the best information so we get the correct information. If we do give incorrect information, we try to correct that as quick as possible. But we'll continue these Zoom meetings if everyone wants to get information from us so we can push this out. In addition to, we'll use all our other available resources as well.
Yes, everyone, thank you for joining today. The next live Zoom meeting will be tomorrow at 11 a.m. and they will continue through the rest of the week. You can join via the same Zoom link that we have already sent out, the one you clicked to join today. Again, you will wait in the waiting room and we will admit everyone. Feel free to join 10-15 minutes early and you will just wait in the waiting room. We will admit you as soon as the video is live again. Thank you guys. Have a good day.